All right, guys, prepare yourselves for a sick match that we have here. Spawning in the top left position, we have our green Protoss player. I've had so much pleasure watching this guy in WCS events so far. He is from South Africa. He is Cooler Master Storm's Pandatank. And spawning in the bottom right position, wearing the tag of Jagong, we have our blue Terran player coming in for Roxas. It is Pro7ect.
And both of these players, of course, are on Twitter, guys. Pandatank is at PandaTankSC2, and Pro7ect is simply at Pro7ect, which is Pro7ect. So make sure you give these guys a follow and a tweet as well. And speaking of tweets, some of you may have seen that a little bit earlier on in this broadcast, I showed the stream a StarCraft 2 World Championship Series t-shirt. It's in a large size. I have one to give away today, and I'm trying to decide how to do it. I'll show it to you guys on camera after the stream. But if I get, because I'm at, I think, 1,980 Twitter followers or something very similar to that at the moment. If I get to 2,100 followers by the end of the day at Jorasar, I will give away this shirt to someone random, and I will post the shirt anywhere in the world to wherever you end up being. So definitely get on that, and I look forward to giving this to one of our fans later on today.
Yeah, free stuff, always cool. And well, Akalon Wastes, we've seen a little bit of TVP here. Yep. About a game or so, and I feel like this game, the current set that we have from these players, it looks like we're going to have a very fast Reaper from Pro7ect. Not unusual at all with that gas timing. Cybernetics core is on the way for Pandatank. No proxy probes, no probes even on the map right now. Looks like we could have a pretty standard economic opener here from Pandatank.
I think so. And Akalon Waste, of course, a map where there is a particularly large amount of dead space over and around the main bases. A lot of fun bits to get your drops in through, maybe a bit of Oracle play. We'll have to see what our players choose to go with. Of course, a wide variety of strategies available to them at this time. A single Reaper coming out from Pro7ect as we have got the reactor going down on the barracks. And I also have great news for the viewers as well. It looks like Daisy versus White Ra is going to be held until we finish this series. So we might get to cast them directly after this, which would be absolutely amazing.
That would be pretty sick, I have to say. Reaper comes in, he's looking around, he's trying to see if there's anything cool going on, sees the mothership core, sees that pylon at the top of the ramp, and he sees the Nexus, so. Pro7ect knows there's nothing weird going on at all. He's pretty securely built his command center in his main base just in case, now getting a factory. So we could see him go for some kind of follow-up, like Widow Mines, Medevacs, all sorts of wonderful things here at Jorasar.
That's right. We should get to see a little bit of... I'd like to see a bit of drop play coming up from Pro7ect, especially on Akalon here. Of course, the watchtowers very early on were removed from those little ledges in the middle of the map as they offered a little bit too much vision of the center there for people to really use the element of surprise in their attacks, so we don't see them in recent versions. The Nexus now about to finish for Pandatank, and he does promptly start his robotics facility.
Very smart decision, I think. Jorasar going for the Robo, basically just playing safe. He knows that since Pro7ect did open up with that gas, he spotted the Reaper, of course, so he knows that, and he can kind of recognize there could be a threat of some sort of follow-up factory play. We do actually have a Widow Mine in production, so the Robo facility, he's going to have access to the observers. He shouldn't really have too much trouble dealing with these Widow Mines.
Yeah, I think he should just about be okay. Like you said, the robotics facility going to play a massive part here in being able to hold these off comfortably. We have reactor marines popping out now in the meantime inside the main base. The orbital command is going to be heading down towards the natural expansion location as the starport is about to finish up. And on a related note, I love the logo that Pro7ect has chosen here. That arm with the whip, really cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of the harder ones to get, if I recall, for playing Terran. It's actually, someone pointed out, even like one of the most basic Dominion logos is actually just it's actually like a much more like constrained version of that, like the guy with the whip like hitting. I guess he doesn't have that logo set, but it's kind of interesting that the whip is a little more prevalent than we'd realized in StarCraft. But looks like Project is going to be getting ready to move out with a couple of these Widow Mines and his Marines. That first medevac is done as well. He's going across the field. The Observer sees him, Jarosar.
Yeah, the Observer sees all, actually, Nathanius. He knows that this may not be sneaky drop play. It could be straight up the front door, and it looks like that's what Project is going for here. Pandatank has to ready his defense. He has got 3 sentries in that middle line at the natural expansion, as well as a Zealot. But that's not really going to be enough to hold off this much. Let's see what he can come out with. Double Forge going down inside the main base. That is not going to be helping his unit count very much at the moment. And we do have the Planetary Nexus, as we like to call it, going down here as the Marines do decide to make a hasty trip out. And, oh, thanks to the Observer, these Widow Mines are also forfeit. So, quite well held there from Pandatank. Needed to make sure the Mothership Core was close by. Didn't have many units to deal with that attack, crucially. But the Mothership Core had enough energy to just about stave it off.
Yeah, I mean, the most Pandatank really lost was a sentry. He didn't have to use really any force fields. He's got a good number of those remaining. And you can kind of tell by he put the forges down after his Observer saw the attack coming. So he was feeling very confident all the way throughout. And now moving into that Robo, he's doing so well. He's only actually lost a single probe this game.
And that's fantastic news as well. Really, really good. That he's managed to keep that level of control. A lot of players would panic, of course, seeing that many units coming up, but Pandatank recognizing that with actually the Photon Overcharge, he should be able to hold it up with decent micro, used a force field or two as well, and was able to correctly target down the medevacs as well with the Nexus, forcing that earlier retreat. So let's see what he ends up doing towards the latter halves of the game. We have a Raven up from Project, and that's going to assist in picking off observers, just walking around the map. Potential for point defense drone, of course, as well, against stalker-heavy compositions, and we do see the Twilight Council now coming down for Pandatank too.
Yeah, it's pretty well timed for him to be able to get his 2-2 upgrades. He does have his first Colossus coming out now. He's going to be moving in towards that AoE type setup, and he's getting his third base down at a relatively nice time as well. And one of the things with Project's aggression, especially not doing damage, is well, we saw a lot of aggression from Terrans around the 10-minute timing with Stim, Medivacs, Combat Shield, but this is a completely different build. He's actually adding on 2 factories. We're going to have a mech play out of Project here, and this is going to be very interesting to see how Pandatank deals with this. He's going to be able to get his third about as early as a Protoss could normally be able to against an aggressive Terran, but this Phoenix is going to come in and spot everything.
This is that's actually a very, very important thing to scout, really, for Pandatank right now. He needs to be able to see exactly what's going on. Manages to spot the he didn't really move out across too much of the base afterwards, but I think he saw exactly what he needed to see. He counted the number of factories, saw that they were all there, recognizes that Project is going to be going into a mech composition. And like you said, getting a pretty quick third base here as well is Pandatank, but he's also crucially getting those 2-2 upgrades from his forges and chrono boosting them out. So his army supply isn't going to be huge compared to his opponent right now, but he will have those upgrades kicking in about, I'd say, just over a minute if he uses Chrono Boost.
Yeah, and we have a Dark Shrine on the way for Pandatank. I really like this decision. Not only are Dark Templar never a bad thing to have for harassing as this Phoenix goes by to scout again, but it's also a cheaper way to get Archons out, and those are actually very, very strong versus mech-based compositions. They do their full bonus damage to Hellbats, which are now being mass-produced by Project, and I think that's going to set them up for a good composition. We want to have a good number of Colossi, Immortals, Templar, of course. Just Storm is always a good thing, but the unit composition is the most important part of dealing with mech. You can't really just go heavy on one unit like Charge Lots or Colossi, because then you can be flattened by a large count of Vikings or Hellbats.
I am a little bit worried, though, for Pandatank, Nathanius, and here's why. We actually cast, on the ESET UK Masters Showdown, a best of 9 between Pandatank just last night, where he really struggled, actually, to deal with mech compositions, because we never went into late-game Tempest against massive siege tank lines. He actually went twice, I believe, into triple robotics facility Colossi, which completely fell flat on its face in both of those games, even though he ended up winning the series 5-2. So I wonder if Project may have caught wind of this and is trying to do a similar strategy, because with the addition of the Raven here, everything else looks pretty identical at this point. He's even getting his ghosts out around the same time.
Yeah, this is kind of almost going for that dream setup that a lot of Terran players talk about. It's like, oh, well, just get some ghosts to deal with, the immortal shields. And most of the time, it's like, well, it's hard to squeeze it all in there. But Project has managed to do that. He is maxed out, and he is pushing. He's maxed at 14.5 minutes with mech. He has taken almost no real harass, even though he wasn't able to put on any real damage earlier. He is quite ahead in supply, and this is going to be a very rough spot for Pandatank to be able to deal with this composition, as you just said.
Acer Hydra, of course, was the player that Pandatank beat yesterday evening, but Hydra did win both of the games where he went for this kind of composition, and I think Pandatank is really going to struggle here. He's at 200 supply now, is a Project, and he's moving out against a 160 supply Protoss. He's going to try and siege up at this third base location. There's not an awful lot that can be done right now. Reinforcements cannot come down to the third base because of this siege tank line. Oh, and we even have Thors just in case. That's going to come in handy with potential air composition as well. Sees that the Photon Overcharge goes down at the third and immediately moves into the natural. This is a great move from Project.
Yeah, especially after he sniped the Mothership core. It had enough energy, but those Vikings being used so well. The Colossus trying to get up here. The Vikings land a little bit of a misstep here. He needs to make sure he targets that down. The Charge Lots and Immortals hitting from the flank. And this is actually doing quite a bit of damage. These Immortals and Archons are unleashing so much pain. That Colossus getting in a lot of damage. But Project has so much left back at home. He still has so much here. The Marines he brought earlier on, they're not good. It's not the mech units he's upgrading, but they still have a lot of DPS to throw in towards those Immortal shields.
I think Project actually made a little bit of a misstep here. He could have gone slightly further up the ramp with his tanks because he knew that there were Immortals at the third base, but instead his tanks were really quite spread out, and the Immortals came in and they were shift-clicking the tanks, which was the absolute correct thing to do by Pandatank here, managing to kill off a reasonable number of them very, very quickly indeed. But the problem is he hasn't actually shaken his opponent yet. Project is still very much here at the natural expansion, trying to use this Hellbats and Ghost to do as much damage as he can. This final warping of Zealots, though, and a couple of Immortals to boot, should just about push Project back.
And at the same time, a Dark Templar has just entered the third base of Project. He actually has a Dark Templar in every mineral line. He is really chewing away at the economy of Project. He's killed 30 SCVs in a matter of seconds here. He just slipped it right by, and he's got proxy pylons on the west and northeast sides of the map. That might actually be enough to put him in a reasonable position to come back here, despite losing all of his army. And with the Immortals, this is a really rough spot, especially considering Pandatank is at 3-3.
No, I completely agree with you here, and I want to say that I don't think Project handled that attack quite as well as he could have. I think noticing that the Immortals were at the third base and going into the natural was great, but he knew that Pandatank was going to come at the army from two angles, if you see what I mean. And with that in mind, he maybe needed to position the tanks a little bit better, or just keep his army slightly close to the tank and just let them start shelling the Nexus. I feel either of those approaches would mean that he could have kept a lot more of the army. As a result, Pandatank, especially with that DT play just now, has killed 34 workers now, and it is 68 to 54 workers up, and Project all of a sudden just isn't feeling nearly as comfortable.
Yeah, the Observer spots the moving out units of Project. He's going to try to get him from the rear. The Stalker's blinking up the tank, starting to siege. And this is a pretty weird spot because right now, Pandatank is going back towards the main base. He can partition off some of these Zealots to each of the expansions, or at least try to break into that third base from the outside, but right now, Project is mostly worried that he gets sandwiched between an army coming out of the main base and an army coming out of out of the blue from behind him. But yeah, Pandatank is going to be able to get up his fourth Nexus Jorassar, and well, this game's been pretty even so far. Another Dark Templar going to harass this fourth base.
He's doing quite well with the DT harass so far in this particular game. We see the army coming back, but having to rely on scans. No missile turrets up just yet, and Pandatank really toying with the idea of going into the third there. Instead, just going to send a couple of zealots and retreat with his army. Doesn't want to accidentally get sandwiched, like you mentioned. A lot of siege tanks, a lot of hellbats, and a good amount of DPS here in this Terran army. But there are Archons here as well with the army of Pandatank. It looks like he's going to go all in. I'm not sure that's a great idea, and he does indeed pull back. Minimal losses there. He could not have engaged into that siege line, I think.
No, it's so risky. He doesn't have quite the perfect composition that he wants yet. The Immortals, good. Archons, good. The Hellbat count, crazy high, though. And with the medevac support, it's going to make things very tricky. He can fight either the tanks alone with his Immortals and Archons, or he can fight the Hellbats. But taking on both at a time, this is a very powerful setup that we have here for for Project.
Now, again, we actually see Pandatank. He's going a lot of Archons and a lot of Immortals against this mech composition from Project. He's actually moving into the 4th base location now. The siege tanks are starting to siege up, and a little bit difficult for Pandatank to engage from 2 angles. He does have some Immortals coming in from the back there, so once again, we see a double flank, but this time, Project does have a lot of units towards the rear. He's trying to pick apart the Immortals. He will be able to, but the Archons are doing so much damage on the left. I think Pandatank's going to take this.
Absolutely perfect Immortal flank to take out Project's army. It looked like he wasn't going to get in such a good position, but now all of these Archons are making their way back over with those shields regenerating. There is but a single ghost here, 1 EMP to attempt to defuse all of this, and I don't think that's going to be quite enough. He's moving in towards the 3rd base. There's barely even any SCVs here to kill. He's done such good harass this game. Pandatank going for the command center. The Hellbats are showing up, but those Archons dealing 47 damage a hit to those Hellbats.
Yeah, this is, that's going to be it. That's GG, and Pandatank takes game number 1.